Hello guys, welcome to the Private Hire Mike podcast. This is the first episode and the podcast at the moment will be available exclusively on my YouTube channel. In the first episode, we are going to be talking about expenses that you will incur as a private hire driver / Uber, Bolt, Free Now driver. Now, the first one that I'm going to talk about, we're going to dive straight in, is fuel. So this is probably going to be one of your largest expenses as a driver. And the cost of the fuel will depend on how many miles you drive, the fuel efficiency of your vehicle, and local prices in your area. It will also vary on whether or not you're using petrol, diesel, LPG. It will also depend on if you're using a hybrid vehicle. Now, in terms of cutting down fuel costs, what I personally like to do is get my fuel from Sainsbury's. Every time I go to Sainsbury's, what I do is I use my Nectar card. So essentially, every time that I purchase fuel, I'll get points, and I think there are other petrol stations such as Shell that offer you the ability to collect points. And as a driver, you're going to be getting fuel quite a lot of times. So it makes sense to collect your points, which you can use in the future for other things. For example, with the Nectar card, I can actually accumulate points and then offset those points on fuel, on food, on other things, for example, and it's just handy. The second expense that you're going to incur as a driver is definitely going to be car maintenance. Regular maintenance such as oil changes, changing tyres, brake inspections, those type of things is essential for the safe and efficient operation of your vehicle. And these costs can vary depending on the make and model of your car, as well as how many miles you're covering. So when it comes to me, I rent, so therefore the maintenance of the vehicle I don't cover. However, if you are an owner driver, then you'll definitely be having to maintain your own vehicle. And sometimes it's good to have somebody that you know who's a mechanic, and that can save you money essentially with these type of things. And in terms of, how often you would maintain your vehicle, like I said, will depend on how you drive, how many miles you do, the age of your vehicle. But essentially, car maintenance is going to be one of those expenses. The next thing is insurance. So private hire drivers are required to have a certain type of insurance, and this is a lot more expensive than just normal insurance that you would have on a private policy. And it's important here to realize that when you first start off in this industry, your insurance is probably going to be a lot more expensive than one of a driver who's been doing this job, for example, 4+ years. So it's good to shop around when it comes to looking for the best deals. And in terms of how much you'll be paying, this can really vary again on the vehicle that you drive, your age, whether you've got any points. But essentially for myself, when I first started, I was paying, and this was about 4 years ago, I was paying about £250 per month. I hadn't got any points on my license, and I was living in an area in South London. But yeah, essentially when it comes to your insurance, be prepared probably to pay up to, I'd say, £300 a month when you first start. But like I say, this is just a ballpark figure, guys. It can vary depending on a lot of different factors. The next expense to take into consideration when driving as a private hire driver is car payments. So if you're financing or leasing your vehicle, you'll have a monthly car payment. Now, this will vary depending on the terms of your loan or your lease, as well as the type and cost of your vehicle. Okay. Next one is going to be your mobile. Okay. Now, we all need a smartphone to work in this job, unless you're working for a local office with the old school radios, which doesn't exist anymore. So you're definitely going to need to have a phone. And with your phone, you're going to have a data plan, okay? Because Uber relies on using mobile data as well as all the other apps. And the cost of a data plan, again, will depend on your mobile carrier and the amount of data you need. And sometimes drivers will be like, well, how much data do I need? Honestly speaking, using the Uber app is not going to take a lot of data, but what will take a lot of data is obviously when you're using your phone between jobs and maybe you're on YouTube or Instagram, social media. So I always recommend to probably go for a data plan that offers you about 10 gigs a month. And you can get that for as little as £7.50 at the moment. I think I'm with Tesco Mobile, £10 a month for 10 gigs of data. And it's even less if you're a club card member. The next one is a vehicle depreciation. So the more miles you drive, the more your vehicle will depreciate in value. Whilst there isn't an out-of-pocket, it's not necessarily an out-of-pocket expense, but it is essential to keep it in mind when calculating your overall costs as a driver. And I'll do a separate podcast in the future in terms of calculating how your vehicle is depreciating. But this is something that you need to take into consideration, because essentially as a car owner, you own something which depreciates in value. Okay, so you're losing money over time. Tolls and parking fees. So depending on your location, you may need to pay for tolls or parking when driving. And those costs can vary and should be factored into your expenses. So if you're a London driver, you're going to be aware of the ULEZ, congestion charges, the DART charge, the airport drop-off fees. These are all expenses and can be offsetted on your tax bill, okay? Bear in mind that Uber actually reimburse you with a lot of this. So, for example, Uber will pay or charge the customer rather the drop-off fee at the airport, and when you take a job into central London, you'll get the extra £1.50 central London fee. The next expense, and this is number 8, is car cleaning. So keeping your car clean is definitely important for a positive passenger experience and for yourself. And you'll probably do this on a weekly basis, maybe twice a week, depends. You can do it yourself, in which case you would want to consider car cleaning supplies. But let's say, for example, you do this at one of those car cleaning places. I think at the moment you're talking about anywhere between £10 to £15. So that's an expense. And if you're doing that twice a week, that could cost you £30. So that's something to take into consideration. Last but not least is miscellaneous expenses. And this can include any additional costs you incur while driving. So although you can't claim for snacks on your tax bill, you're probably going to be buying food when you're driving out. You know, you're going to be buying coffees and, you know, maybe other things. For example, for your passengers, you might want to include water, tissues, chewing gum, and there could be other expenses as well, such as car phone holders, charging cables, car mats. These are like your miscellaneous, all right? So I hope this podcast has been helpful, especially for any new drivers out there who are wondering what kind of expenses they are going to incur as a driver. And it's definitely important to track your expenses closely so that you can know what your income is at the end of the month or the week, okay? Because these all add up. So You might earn, for example, £1,000 a week with Uber or other apps, but you also need to take in consideration your expenses, because you need to take your expenses off your earnings, and that will actually give you your true profit for the week, month. Obviously, that's as well before tax. Anyway, guys, thanks for listening to this podcast. If you found it useful, do hit the thumbs up button and get involved. Drop me a comment below, and don't forget to subscribe to the Private Hire YouTube channel, and I'll see you in the next podcast episode.